This is the Weekly Set, the official podcast of TheTotalScreen.com. Episode 182, recorded November 17th, 2018. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Weekly Set, the official podcast of TheTotalScreen.com. I am your host. My name is Tyson. Joining me today, as always, is my partner in crime here at the Total Screen, William Rohrig.
Hello.
And we have two special guests all the way from Game Witness. We have Alex and Mike.
Hello.
How you guys doing?
And today we brought all of us together here so we could talk about Daredevil Season 3. This came out a while ago, but we just kind of got everybody caught up on it, worked out a time where we could all get together to talk about it, and that's now. So let's talk about Daredevil Season 3. I kind of broke down a little bit of an order here, so we're going to kind of go through some of like the little story beats and stuff and talk about what we thought about those, and then kind of get into specifics as far as like the production itself or like things we liked about it or usage of sound or So let's kick things off with Matt's story. So Matt Murdock, last time we saw him in The Defenders, we saw the little teaser of him waking up kind of in the church. And now we kind of get it. It just kind of picks up right from there. And that's most of Matt's story for like the first half of the season is basically just him being a bit emo, hanging out in a church basement.
Hey, his girlfriend died, you know.
His dead girlfriend died.
Dead girlfriend died again.
Yeah.
So of course he's emo.
This time for real.
This time for real. Maybe. Who knows?
But yeah, so he's just kind of like going through his little tissy fit about not wanting to be Matt Murdock anymore and kind of pushing his friends away, and his friends all think he's dead. And
Well, he's all like, oh, Matt Murdock's dead. Only Daredevil exists now.
yeah, so he's just got kind of his own thing going. And that's kind of like the first half, and you kind of see the real kind of figureheads of his story when we jump back with him, as we have him and the father and this one a sister, a nun at the church, who's kind of putting up with his shit and dishing out a little bit herself back to him. And that's kind of like the story is kind of just focusing on that until he's kind of like forced to surface again and gets involved in all sorts of happenings. Basically once he realizes that Fisk is being released from prison. Or not necessarily released, but being put into protective custody outside of prison. And this aspect of it really sets him off, sets a lot of the characters off. And he just kind of like already on his emo binge is like, oh, well now justice is bullshit, like nothing matters anyways, and he just wants to kind of embrace the devil inside of him and go that way. And what I really like about Matt in this season and just this season in general for the way they portray Matt is I like that he's back to the original costume. I like that it just has like a raw feel to it.
Yeah. Like he says at one point, like he buried that costume, like that's not him anymore, right?
Yeah, I always like the low tech versions of costumes, when characters
basically like his attitude was like, well, he comes out of like the building collapse from like the Defenders with like oh, everything that was in that building is dead. Like that version of Daredevil is dead. Matt Murdock is dead. I'm the only one who exists. Like Black Suit Daredevil.
He's also good.
Oh no, go on. I was just gonna make a joke.
Too late. I've ruined it. It works. The costume design, just like you're talking about, for the character itself, because Matt's sort of he's throwing everything off. He's not worried about being a lawyer anymore. He's not worrying about paying his rent because he's an asshole. He's just gonna let Karen do it from now on.
Yeah.
What an ass. But yeah, he doesn't care anymore. He doesn't need the body armor. He's just like, yeah, I'll put on a sock over my head and a sweatshirt and go beat some people up.
Yeah, very much.
I got nothing else to lose and nowhere else to be right now, so why not?
Which, by the way, like, Karen says, like, obviously, like, Karen, like, says she's struggling to pay, like, how could she afford to pay, like, 2 New York City rents and on her journalist salary in the first place?
That's the most unrealistic aspect of this whole season.
Yes.
Massive plot hole right there.
Yeah, it is. Massive plot hole. Like, they ain't paying her that much money.
It's kind of like whenever you see like a sitcom and it's a struggling family, and then you're like, "Where's the set? San Francisco? No fucking way."
Yeah, exactly.
Like a house in San Francisco, and they're like blue collar. That's not the case.
That's not realistic. Come on.
Yeah, it's the biggest plot hole in the season. But he gets this fire under his butt because of Wilson Fisk. It forces him to basically resurface a little bit, not necessarily as Matt Murdock, but just in general to go above ground. Forces him to encounter both Foggy and Karen again. You know, they get on his case about wanting to do anything, and he's just looking for. They go on a few cases where they're trying to kind of do things the right way through the laws, and every time anything slightly goes wrong, he's like, "See, I told you, justice is dead. Justice just doesn't work."
Doesn't work.
Which in a sense, I kind of agree with him, just because, and I brought this up when we talked about, I think it was Iron Fist season 2, that what's it with the Marvel Netflix shows with like a death flag for whenever a character does something right, and it's still carrying on through Daredevil. It's like a character stands up and does the right thing, they're dead.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And it's like I'm all for dark stories and everything, but like there's a certain point where it's like, what is anybody fighting for anymore? Like it's just instant death for anything like moral or done right. You know, it's like it gets a little like predictable.
Yeah. I mean, we'll get to the dead character soon, but it does. Sorry, I've lost my train of thought already. But Matt, his absolute just inscrutability all through the first half of the season, he's just underground. He's being an ass. He's being emo. Hard to blame him in some respects. Turning his back entirely on the law, I thought, was a really interesting thing. There's very little Matt Murdock lawyer stuff. He only lawyers up and gets into this as a means to an end for how do I get back out there and kick more butt as Daredevil. He's completely turned that side of himself off. And the Law and Order candidate, I'm already getting there, sorry, the guy that really is redeemable, as you said, ends up dead.
Yeah, pretty much.
We can kind of get into his story, because I mean, we can get back into kind of aspects of Matt's story as we get into other things.
But we should like circle around to where Matt's story ended up, which is like, because like we know like the entire season, Matt has forsaken Matt Murdock essentially, right? But then when we end the season where he's starting to embrace being Matt Murdock again, he comes around, largely thanks to Foggy and Karen, like just really like leaning in hard on him and not giving up on him. But he ends the season in like a much better place where he began.
I still feel like that his kind of emo reaction to what needed to happen to Fisk is kind of like true to what should have happened around season 1. Because as much as you like moralize the idea of like trust in the system, how many fucking lives would have been saved if they had just killed him?
Right. But again, like they like hammer it home like that. If he did, that would like change him. Like that would literally make him something else. It'd make him the Punisher.
I think what I don't like is that this is the third season with the same theme.
Right.
we get it.
That's true.
We got through that in the first season. Like, can you
and we got that in the second season where they literally juxtaposed Daredevil with like the Punisher, showing that like if Daredevil started killing people, he'd literally become Frank Castle, and you can see how broken Frank Castle is as a person.
But I think it gets kind of like it's with the predictability of the dark nature of the series and the way like any character that does anything right dies, you know, and the way that has played out through the Marvel Cinematic Universe on TV, on Netflix. This is exactly why, like before we started this podcast, we were talking about Sabrina on Netflix, and the word I used to describe it was anti-moral. And this is the reason why I think Sabrina being anti-moral is something I enjoyed so much. It's because I'm so sick of the moralizing of like, no, we have to do things the right way. It's like, meanwhile, like 50 more people just died.
Yeah.
Also, you could feel good about your actions. It's like,
how many people have to die so Matt Murdock can stay Catholic?
Yeah.
It's really
Right.
it's the Batman problem. You know, if Batman kills the Joker, okay, a lot of people are gonna live. If he just breaks his rule and kills the Joker this one time, things are gonna be good afterward. If Matt would just go through with it and kill Fisk, and that brings us back to where he ends up later in the season.
Then he couldn't live with himself.
Then he couldn't himself. Fisk wouldn't be
emo.
but Matt would just be inconsolable.
Yeah.
We just need like another character to do it for him. We need like a moment like the end of the first Deadpool movie where like
we just need
Matt's like, and now you're going to prison, and then some other character just walks up and shoots him in the head.
We just need like Frank Castle to do it. Frank went give it a second thought.
That's what the great thing about the end of season 1 of Jessica Jones is she just walks up and she just snaps Kilgrave's neck.
She does. Because it's what needs to be done, and because she knows like there's no other options.
Yeah.
She knows it's the only option.
And it's to me a mark against Matt. He can't go. He can't take that next step of what needs to be done. Instead, he's just punting on this. He's going to put.
But then again, in Matt's favor, Jessica Jones is another broken person.
She may be broken, but how many people aren't suffering from Kilgrave?
Right.
Saw Kilgrave victim count. That stopped. There was a hard date at which his victim count stopped, and there was a reason why that happened. It's like Kingpin's victim count is like still growing.
and Kingpin is even more dangerous in some ways than Kilgrave, because like Kingpin can like control like entire fucking organizations without mind control.
Yeah. True. I think it's an issue of motivation though, and maturity.
like he is like
kind of like a child,
Yeah, Kilgrave was a child. But Kingpin is like the master manipulator. Yeah, I see like the value, the benefit in like just killing him, and so he can't fucking like get the entire FBI on his side. Again.
Well, that's actually a very good point. What's going to happen? He's going to go back into jail. He's going to start this sort of plan and plotting all over again. He's going to set this in motion, and there's your next season.
And then he's just going to get back out.
Well, like the season ends with them like all at Foggy's family place, and they're basically like they bring up the biggest problem, which is like, hey, we got Kingpin off our asses temporarily, and then Karen said like, unless like Vanessa or is that Kingpin's girl? Yeah, yeah. Says, unless she gets hit by a bus. It's like she gets
we didn't account for that.
Yeah,
she's gonna. Flu season is coming, guys.
Yeah, season 4 of Daredevil is just gonna be Matt like constantly saving her life as she like accidentally steps off a curb almost in front of a bus and
yeah.
But let's move on from Matt's story. We'll get back to stuff with Matt, obviously, because he's the main character.
Right. We'll get back to it next season.
Yeah.
Crisis of fate.
But let's talk about FBI agent Ray Nadeem. And so he's, as we already mentioned, spoiler alert. I don't feel like we really need to say spoiler alert. The second we say that we're talking about the entirety of Daredevil season 3, it's kind of obvious.
I think people should know at this point in the podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah. The whole show was available on day one. Like, please don't watch any podcasts before you watch the show.
Right, exactly.
Nothing's stopping you.
I don't read like discussion threads before like even watching the entire show. What's the point?
Yeah. But he was kind of brought in as like the rule of law character, like the by the book rule of law character.
I don't know, like rule of law. He's just like
the Rahul of law.
The rule. I wouldn't like characterize him as the rule of law. I would characterize him like he was brought in as somebody who was vulnerable because like he has money issues, right? That he's struggling with, and he's struggling to like support his family and deal with like these money issues. So like one of the things like he's trying to do, he's trying to get a promotion in the FBI so that he gets paid more money, so that would help him. And because he has issues with debt and stuff, like his boss is saying, oh, you're a liability, we can't like promote you, it just wouldn't look good, and so he's trying to do anything, whatever he can to like get like this big win to like prove to the FBI that oh I'm valuable, you need to like promote me. And the way he sees this do is when Wilson Fisk comes out and starts like giving him information on like these other crime organizations, specifically like, and I can't remember like the other guys.
Let's just say Eastern Europeans, unless
the Eastern Europeans, like, and so immediately he's like, holy shit, Wilson Fisk is like spilling all this shit. This is big. I'm gonna get that promotion now. And it's like, and so he just runs with that. And we find out that this is the way Wilson Fisk is manipulating things, right?
That's the reason he's broken.
And he's has been before that.
But it's never successfully worked on him. Like the idea of like blackmail material or like kind of putting him where he's in a position of jeopardy isn't what ended up working on him.
Well, no, it worked
Wilson Fisk. What worked on him was the fear of his family.
Well, no, it worked on him because Wilson Fisk specifically chose Nadeem because Nadeem had his family and he had these debt issues. He was already compromised from the start.
Yeah, I get that. He was in a position of vulnerability, but I'm saying none of that worked on him as far as like him betraying his goals.
Oh, right.
What worked on him was the fear of his family being attacked.
Well, yeah.
Which it just kind of seemed like overplotting at a certain point.
that seemed like that worked on a lot of people. So
yeah. They have to show the manipulation, and then it gets to the point where it's like, well, is he going to go through with it or not? And then they have to throw in at the last second. Oh yeah, and if you don't go along with us, we'll murder your whole family.
Right.
That's the sort of point you got to go. Like, couldn't you have just done that from the
Well,
beginning?
you have to have like a plan B, right? Like
Fisk kind of overplotted that, you know.
he overplots, but maybe it's good that if you're Wilson Fisk, maybe it's good that you overplot.
Wilson Fisk is the guy who like walks up to a shut door and starts like unscrewing the hinges and stuff without ever testing the doorknob. He's like, how do I take this door out of the frame? And then somebody else walks up and just opens the door and goes, it was unlocked.
So Nadeem is kind of a tragic character in the fact that, like, for the first half of the season, he gets suckered into working for Wilson Fisk without even realizing it and thinking the entire time that he's, like, doing the right thing and he's being, like, a righteous, moral person when he doesn't even know what the hell is happening, like, right under his nose.
Yeah, he doesn't realize the manipulation. He realizes that Fisk isn't somebody that he can trust wholeheartedly. It's not like he's falling in for Fisk's charm.
It's not like he thinks like Wilson Fisk is like some trustworthy person, but the way he manipulates him is like he's feeding him this information. This information is helping his career, so he's willing to go along with it as long as he keeps getting info that helps him.
He's also feeding him a plausible motive for why he's doing it.
Right? Yeah.
This is about his girl. This isn't about himself. This isn't about making things better for himself and all of a sudden making these hard choices because of that. It's
he only cares about his wife.
Girl. Yeah. Which is
his girlfriend.
Which is something that Dean can recognize as, or can relate to in the fact that that's what he cares about, his family, Right. So he becomes kind of the tragic character of the story as he's put through the ringer, eventually framed with all the information to frame him being kind of held over him, as I had mentioned, in addition to the threat of retaliation against his family if he doesn't just answer to Fisk and work for him. And he does that very reluctantly. You can just see it on his face. Very expressive actor. He's just struggling every moment, trying to like mediate as much of the damage as he can.
Yeah, the guy who they got to play Nadeem is like a good actor. He did a really excellent job.
Yeah, and he's trying to kind of reduce the damage as much as he can in every situation he's in, even at the risk of him being kind of admonished by Fisk and his people. But he's trying to kind of do the best he can within that situation, not quite accepting fully that has to kind of follow this hard path. The thing that kind of puts him over the edge is Poindexter, who we'll get to later, and some of his involvement with him related to tasks directly under Fisk that kind of push him too far and make him kind of start to look at possible alternatives.
Right.
At the end of the day, he ends up sacrificing himself in a play that sadly kind of doesn't necessarily work.
What happens with Nadeem is Matt eventually gets to him, right? So like Daredevil, like in a pretty ballsy move, Daredevil just confronts him and says like, basically tells him to wake fuck up,
Yeah.
What the hell's going on? And eventually, and he reluctantly at first comes around to Matt's side. Eventually, fully comes around to Matt's side, and that's when he steps up. And then that's when he like eats a bullet when he steps up.
Intentionally, which is kind of interesting.
Intentionally, yes.
He probably could have possibly gotten away for at least a while. He might have survived the rest of the course of the show on the run or something, but he put himself directly in harm's way for the purpose of making his last message, his last statement, hold up in court as a dying admission. I can't remember the exact wording they use, so the court procedure wording they use, but it's basically his final, his knowing he's going to die, his statement, his final statement. And they end up trying to use that against Fisk. Still kind of doesn't work. Tragically, but at least.
Well, it doesn't work because Wilson Fisk, like, friggin' poisons the jury by, like, threatening, like their families or some shit.
That was before. He makes a statement after.
And the statement at the end does help. Before that, that's the tragic thing, is Nadeem goes through all this crap. He gets turned on by his boss, and that's also why he's such a moral shining light of this story. Everybody else gets turned by Fisk. Everybody does. He does not get turned by Fisk until, I think it's, what's her name? Tammy? His boss's name or whatever?
Yeah, his boss.
Hadley.
Hadley basically, like, forces him into doing, He's
pushed into doing this, and he lasts, like, I guess in the continuity about a month before he finally does the right thing.
Well, you could see, like, also, like, everything, like, he's hating, like, every fucking minute of it. Like, every scene he's in.
With hair, he's hating it all.
Yeah, exactly. He's hating it. He has, like, a huge grimace on his face. Like, he's forced to ride around with Bullseye and shit, who he knows, like, is, like, a complete psycho who will fucking, like, turn on him and kill him on a dime. So, yeah, it's pretty bad. Like, yeah, he does something smart at the end where he leaves a statement before he's killed, which they're allowed to use as evidence because the law says, if you make a statement and you believe, like, your life is in danger, you're about to die, then it can be admissible. I don't know if that's true or if they made that up for a show, but...
Well, I can say from my experience of watching other TV shows that
you can't.
It's something I've heard before. It's not unique to Daredevil, this concept.
Right.
So I imagine it either has roots in reality or in another show that everybody...
It might. Like, I just can't, I'm not a lawyer, so I can't speak to the legal credibility
Wait a minute.
Anything brought up.
But that's why we put you on the show.
Oh, I lied to you this whole time. Sorry. I'm not a legal expert.
Let's move on, because that's kind of Nadim's storyline for the most part. We'll probably touch on other aspects of that when we circle back and talk about the aspects of the show we really like and everything. But let's go on. We had just mentioned Bullseye, or Benjamin Dex Poindexter, who is a complete fucking psychopath.
Yeah, he's like the textbook case.
Yeah, exactly. He's just if you just straight up took a definition out of a psychology textbook or something, he'd be like the example of a psychopath. From mutilating animals as a child, which of course they do it with like his little spin of he did it by throwing rocks at them with perfect precision. That's everything with this character. I get that's like that Bullseye that's the character, is that's who that character is. But did anybody else take it as almost just a little bit on the cheesy side when they first had the fight between the first fight between him and Daredevil, and he's just like perfectly ricocheting objects at him and stuff?
Well, I mean, that's the character. I don't know what you're talking about. Like you're like, it's cheesy, and I'm like, well, that's Bullseye. He wouldn't be Bullseye if he can't do shit like that. So I don't.
Yeah, but it's too. It stretches, it stretches a bit. The ease at which he does that stuff without much explanation. I mean,
there isn't much explanation.
Like when
there
he is
isn't
a
much
kid.
Explanation. Like I'm looking at the Wikipedia for Bullseye, like the comic book version, and it literally says he is a psychopathic assassin that uses his line of work to exercise his homicidal tendencies and work out his own personal vendetta against Daredevil. And it says, although he possesses no superpowers, Bullseye is able to use almost any object as lethal projectile. And so it literally says no superpowers. So there's no origin to like explain it.
I get that the Netflix version of the comics is a bit more grounded,
right?
And that's what makes it kind of contrasting that he's so perfect and precise, especially with the ricocheting aspect.
I mean, they kind of like pointed out like early when like Wilson Fisk is going through his history and stuff, and we see like when he's a kid and he's like playing baseball and he's like getting mad that they want to bench him, and so he like ricochets the baseball off of a pole and kills like the coach.
So my point there is that I laughed there. I thought it was funny because that's how shitty, like how cheesy, his power was.
That's exactly it. It's like it might work in the comics, but like there's a whole thing about establishing tone, like
right.
When you establish your tone as being more grounded, the things that you could get away with when you're not doing that, like end up, you can't necessarily get away with the same things. And that's the kind of thing, like when he had the one fight with Daredevil and he's like just ricocheting stuff left and right. It's like, okay, this is a bit much, This is a bit too comic booky for how grounded Daredevil is for the most part. I mean, of course, you have stuff like Luke Cage is in the same universe with him and he's, bulletproof and stuff. So you have kind of ridiculous aspects already, but just the kind of like the perfect precision without any cause, and based on the tone of the series is a bit much. Like, I think it would be kind of cool more if like maybe he just had perfect aim and he just was really good with his aim, and then maybe once or twice was able to pull off like a cool ricochet move or something. But just like like the way he was just doing that, like, constantly. Like everything he was doing was like perfectly aimed and ricocheting, and it's like it was a big mop.
All I can say is like that's supposed to be the character, like literally.
Yeah. I get that, but you got to tone it down.
You can't call somebody Bullseye if they miss. he's not Bullseye then. He's just like some guy who's like occasionally good at throwing shit. But
I think especially for like a show that is mostly about action choreography, right? You would think that they would think, okay, does this look good? If we do this, is it gonna look good? Is this gonna look cool? Is it gonna look like he's a badass? Or is it gonna look funny as hell,
And for you, it was funny as hell.
Only that first one, because I'll be honest, I was okay with it in the bulletin fight scene. I was cool there. I was cool most of the show with the way Bullseye was portrayed. Not that I knew of him really before, just that for me watching this show, I'm like, yeah, it's a cool character. I like him. Just that first time as a child, I was just like, oh, get out of here.
I mean, I'm first one to admit, like, outside of the show, I'm not a big Daredevil fan. I never read the comic books. Like, so I don't know, like, everything about Daredevil. Like, I know, like, the big obvious,
you're not a lawyer and you haven't memorized every comic book in the series?
Yeah. No, I haven't. Like, I only know stuff about, like, which this show borrows heavily from. Like, the Frank Miller Daredevil stuff, which actually, like, going back and, like, reading a synopsis, Frank Miller's run on Daredevil is actually incredibly shitty. I can't believe, like, people, like, revered that back then, except for, like, the fact that maybe it's because, like, edgy shit was cool in the 80s. I don't know.
It was something different for its time.
Yeah, it was something different for its time, yeah. But, like, going back and read it, it's like, way too edgy to the point of, like, being, like, cringy.
Which makes it fit perfectly in the Netflix Marvel universe right now.
Yeah, except like, this, like, tones it down, like, a lot, so...
Just if only they toned it down a little more.
Yeah.
Hey, but the costume that I like so much is a kind of low-tech version of his costume. That's from the Frank Miller run.
Yeah, that's from the Frank Miller run. Yeah, like a lot of things here are from the Frank Miller run. One of the things like that I like that's not from the Frank Miller run is the fact that Karen Page is not a heroin-addicted porn star who just sells Matt Murdock's identity to Kingpin for drug money. So that's nice. Because that happened.
So you're not a lawyer, you haven't memorized that, and you're anti-heroin addicted prostitutes who sell out our heroes?
Yeah.
It's like I don't even know you.
I do want to say one thing. I do like the fact that this season does that story beat where Karen gives up Matt Murdock's identity, but it's done like in a much better way that doesn't make Karen like automatically like a piece of shit.
Yeah,
like,
he's able to read it off of her rather than her actually giving it away.
Right, exactly. For drug money because she's a porn star and addicted to heroin. Thanks, Frank Miller.
Anybody else have comments about Dex that they want to bring up?
I really thought he was a good character in this. Like, aside from the silly like Bullseye stuff, like he was actually intimidating as a character because he was a guy who was fully psychopathic, who could take on Daredevil, like basically stomp Daredevil's ass like throughout the season, really. And you know, like, and he was interesting because like they went in depth. They went with like what makes him tick. Like he was obsessed with this woman, right? To the point of like he met when he was working on Suicide Hotline, and he got obsessed to the point where like he was like stalking her and shit.
I like the way they did that too, because it wasn't like a attraction. That was his tether. That was his people suit.
Yeah, that's his tether. Because like before, like they showed like he had a relationship with one of his therapists. He got really attached to her, and then she was dying. And when she died, like he immediately like felt lost again.
And it wasn't like out of sorrow or anything. It was just straight up out of like, I don't know what to do. You're an essential part of my routine.
Yeah, you're an essential part of my routine. That routine is broken, and so he didn't know what to do. So he saw like this woman like as a replacement for her. Apparently,
it's a hard character to pull off just because you're having a character that's void of emotion.
And of course, like Kingpin is trying to manipulate him, trying to manipulate Dex to get Dex to like, you know, work for him, do what he wants him to do, which is basically become Daredevil and smear Daredevil's name all over the media. And so of course, like Kingpin uses this woman that he's obsessed with to manipulate him by getting her to work at the hotel he's staying at. And then eventually, like when Dex finally finally makes a connection with her, you know, because at first, like, Kingpin brings her to a hotel so Dex could see her, confront her, and then she'd see how crazy he is and then run away from him. And that was Kingpin's initial plan. And then when that happens, but then when Dex confronts her again and actually, like, gets her to, like, on his side a little bit, Kingpin just straight out murders her.
Yeah. And it's the whole, that was actually a good episode where they were showing how Kingpin was kind of reading Dex as a character, like understanding him and going through like who he is and what makes him the way he is, and taking up the whole like North Star idea of like, you know, this woman had taken on this role of a North Star for him so that he could like have a way to guide himself to fit into society. And by killing her and replacing her as his
basically North Star, yeah, Kingpin made himself Dex's North Star. He
made him Dex's, like, basically, you know, Dex became his Pokemon.
Yeah. Yeah. Pretty much. His attack dog.
Which, as I said, it's not an easy character to pull off just because the character is devoid of actual emotion, devoid of actual empathy. And so there's no real connections. Like, he has connections to people, but they're not based on emotions. They're based purely on how he can best fit in to his environment, you know? And it's hard to pull off characters like that. You need some other aspect of the character to make the character interesting. I mean, Hannibal does it by making him just like straight up Luciferian, you know? And in this case, they do it just by making him such a wild card, like so unpredictably violent that he's almost less of a character and more of like this like force of nature that everyone's trying to kind of have a little hand in controlling. Else to add about him, Alex, Mike?
Alex, you got anything? Go ahead, Ben.
No, I mean, I just generally really like this character. I like the acting for the character.
Do you know the actor was actually one of the people up to play Captain America?
No, I didn't know that. Interesting.
Yeah, he was up to play Captain America before Captain America was cast. It's weird thinking of him as this character and imagining him as Captain America now.
Yeah, right.
I think
Captain America is just this murderous sociopath.
Well, these guys got the smirk. I think he wouldn't necessarily have the murderous sociopath aspect to it. He didn't have to.
Hopefully.
I think he's just good. He honestly just seems like a good actor.
Yeah.
He's hamming it up a bit, but it works because obviously he's a sociopath, so he's not meant to be a normal person just living in the world of Daredevil. So he's a supervillain. He's playing a supervillain part. So I really enjoyed him.
My favorite part with him is probably when he's like jogging, like as he's watching this girl on the routine, and he just like pushes right past a guy. No apology, just doesn't even care. It's just this kind of like his view in the world. Like it speaks a lot about that in that one moment.
Yeah, like when he's talking to her and he's eating the same kind of pizza, or just chilling in his car with the sniper scope. That was great. Like those little touches, I thought were what the actor did the best. Just like really getting into that extra creepiness.
Yeah. It's just it's little touches like that can make a character like shine and stand out. Let's go to what's probably the biggest character in as far as like presence in this whole season, which is Wilson Fisk. Full Kingpin this season.
Full Kingpin this season.
He didn't
go full Kingpin the first season, but
I thought he had, and then he did this again. Yeah,
and then he did this again. But he is the master manipulator. He's the puppet master. He's the one pulling all the strings, right? Like he definitely manipulates everybody into doing his bidding. He gets control of the FBI. Yeah,
I multiple sources. He's just like he doesn't just get like a mole in the FBI to control things.
No, he doesn't get a mole in the FBI. He gets like he gets Nadeem. He gets like Nadeem's boss. Like he gets Dex, which obviously Dex was like super easy because like he's unstable and psychopathic to begin with.
Yeah, he just basically takes a whole cross-section of the FBI, and it shows how easily it was for him to, like, manipulate that situation. But what's interesting about it, I think, is that you forget how much of a kingpin he is as you're watching at the beginning. You're like, I think, at least for me, I can't speak for you guys, but, like, I kind of bought into the fact that he was, when he was making his first deal with Nadeem, I kind of bought into his reasoning, that he gave of the,
his vulnerability.
I kind kind of bought that.
It's that he was doing it for the girl, because we'd kind of been set up to see how important that was to him in the first season. So I didn't I didn't even notice an ulterior motive in there.
We see we do see that she is important to him. Like, that's not fake. Like, that's real.
That kind of almost sheds some doubt on that, where they have the comment about you don't even know if he's actually attracted to her, if he just likes seeing himself in her eyes.
Right.
And you have the scene at the end when they're getting married, and he's lost because he's looking right at himself reflected in her eyes, and he gets completely lost and loses track, and people have to go Wilson, and he's oh, sorry, or something, he's snaps out of it.
Yeah, exactly. It's interesting. Again, I think as this starts to say he's the best villain in the MCU so far, because especially Vincent D'Onofrio's portrayal, he's a bad guy. Obviously, he's selfish. But his motivations are he's motivated by the fact that he grew up feeling powerless, and he had an abusive father that he murdered, and I think there's a deep part of him that he does this because he's angry and he doesn't want to be powerless, like he used to be.
Yeah, so I at least bought into that this was his main reasoning, and that I was sure obviously once he gets into a situation he's going to start twisting things to his advantage. So I wasn't surprised when he had a secret lair within his apartment.
Yeah.
I was okay, yeah, that makes sense. He would do that. He would make those allowances for himself, even though he'd be doing it for this other reason. But then as the plot progresses and you start to see how big his actual plans were, how involved they were, and how much actual control he took over many situations, right down to, which we're going to talk about later, the long take prison fight, where that's the first time Matt realizes that, how much power Fisk had in his situation,
right,
that went way beyond what was expected. And it just continues on. Every time something else happens, it's oh wow, when Nadeem is brought into the circle of corruption there at the FBI, it's oh, his boss does it, and that's kind of a little bit shocking in that moment. But then it just keeps going. It's oh yeah, there's let me bring you to a room in the FBI building, and here's 10 other FBI agents that are high up in the agency that are all under Fisk's control as well. That's kind of, I think, what was fascinating about Fisk in this. Besides the fact, I think D'Onofrio as Fisk in this season probably had more screen time than any other character, including Matt Murdock. Because there wasn't just his character as he was in reality, but there was character as he was in Matt's head. And
Matt
as he was in Dex's head.
For a good, the season, Matt is seeing, Matt has, voices in his head, of, Kingpin, and then, his father at one point. These demons Matt's dealing with, and they manifest physically in the show.
Mm-hmm.
D'Onofrio gets a lot of screen time.
D'Onofrio also say is probably the second most inspired casting that Marvel has done, full stop, in anything.
It is also pretty
after probably Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man.
Yes, it's also pretty awesome though when Matt finally has enough of when Matt's contemplating killing Wilson Fisk, and then that vision comes, and then he just beats the shit out of it.
Yeah, there's lots of moments of Matt's interaction with his visions.
Yeah,
well, he wishes he could do, but he never can actually bring himself to do.
Yeah, he can't actually bring himself to do.
He gets the emo wording out here. He's like, yeah, I'm gonna kill Fisk, I'm gonna do this, but it's not something he can actually follow through with.
Yeah, he's too good a person for it. Whereas Fisk is, just a piece of garbage. That's the difference. Fisk is such a great villain, you hate him because he preys on the weak. He finds somebody, every person he turns in this, from Nadeem's boss to Nadeem himself, everybody else in the FBI, that woman who's doing the surveillance for him in the basement, they've all got this one thing, this one weak point, and Fisk hits it and just enslaves them to him after that. He turns these people, and that's why it's so easy to hate. That's what he's such a great villain. Whereas Dex, you can't really stay mad at Dex. Even when he's in that van chewing on the pizza looking at the girl, it's almost kind of sweet when he does it because he's just trying to stay on the straight and narrow.
Yeah,
that's the difference between the characters. When you have one, like you called him, he's a wild card. He could be going any different direction, but he's not, explicitly evil. But Fisk is. There's something very wrong in him, and D'Onofrio absolutely captures all of it. That's, like you said, inspired casting.
Yeah. it's because it's not just that he's like, he pulls off the manipulation so well, but he's also just such a physically imposing threat. And, you know, like, every time I see D'Onofrio as Fisk, I'm like, God, this guy's like 6'8" or something. He's
and
like
you're also
2 or something.
And you're also reminded of how dangerous he is because he can go off at the drop of a hat. Like,
oh yeah. He can just, but he'll do it like in this weird kind of combination of like calm and fury. Like, he did that when he was in the car.
Scene in the car.
Yeah, guy gave him bad news, and he's like, "Here, take off your, you know."
Yeah, take off your jacket. Just give it to me. He's just like, yeah, just give me your jacket. And he's kind of like, why? And he's like, just give me your jacket. And so he does. And then like Fisk takes his jacket, like wraps it over his face and starts punching him to death. Yeah. You know, as hard as he can. And
it's
then
that combination of the two things. It's that cold calmness of knowing that that's what he's going to do and demanding his jacket. And then like the violent and snapping brutality of just him actually doing it, you know?
Right.
It's just like he just completely lost his temper, but he was able to hold on to it long enough for it to be clean. Yeah. And that's what makes him so like terrifying as a villain. It's just that he's not just this loose cannon that can go crazy on you. He's not just this figure that can manipulate situations. He's like both.
Yeah, he's both. He can do both. Like, yeah, that's what makes him so dangerous. That's what makes him imposing. That's what makes him a great villain.
And that's the thing. Is like, it's the way D'Onofrio plays him too. It's just the way he carries himself. He looks massive. And D'Onofrio is a big guy. He's not small, but he's not that big, you know? He's not like, you know, the guy who plays the Mountain on Game of Thrones or something. Yeah,
I know.
But every time he's on screen, it feels like he's the guy who plays the Mountain on Game of Thrones, because he just carries himself with so much force, you know, that you just feel like every step he takes can like creak the ground.
Like,
and, you know?
literally, like, the scene we were talking about where, like, Karen reveals Matt's secret to Kingpin. That's a tense scene because Karen is like in there, like she's deliberately like, you know, poking the hornet's nest, you know, trying to get a reaction. And it's so tense because you don't know what, you know, he's going to snap or do. He doesn't because he knows like there's cameras and shit. He's being watched. So he's not stupid, but he does immediately like, you know, send Bullseye to kill her after that encounter, you know, but mainly not because like she came in there and like she poked him with a stick, but because she admitted to killing Wesley, like his second-hand man in season 1, who he actually became close with, you know, emotionally, which he doesn't become emotionally attached to many people, you know, like, so he makes note that his relationship with like Wesley was rare, and that is what really gets him.
And that's also what made him terrifying in that scene, is that you could see the fury, you could see him tense up, like, and you could see the fury like threatening to spill out, but you could also see the cold restraint that was keeping him from lashing out.
That was keeping him from lashing out. Again, that's the thing where he can lash out at a moment's notice, but he's also able to restrain himself and maintain calm until he knows, like, you know, he's in the clear.
Yeah, so that's Fisk. I mean, it's not anything new to talk about his character with this, because he's been in 3 seasons of the show. Yeah, you know, we've seen him as the main villain in season 1. We saw him kind of as like almost a cameo in season 2.
Yeah, he was a cameo in season 2 because there's too much stuff going on with Punisher and then stupid hand ninjas.
And then season 3 is pretty much, this is his season. You know, this is, you know, season 1 was Daredevil season. Season 3 is Kingpin season. You know,
right.
Yeah, it's the flowering of his plan. He's going to make himself the indispensable person for the FBI, and he's going to knock out all of his criminal competition all in one blow.
And everyone he perceives has wronged him, and
this is him at his full power, and he almost gets it.
Yeah, he almost gets it. Except Daredevil is just that damn determined, you know?
He's that damn determined to bring him down the right way, you know? And so finally gets taken down after only killing 50,000 people.
So that's all the main characters, right? So
well, that's the main parts of the story. We also have the smaller stories for Karen and Foggy to talk about.
Right.
Let's talk about Karen. She had a
full episode. Karen, that like explored her tragic backstory.
This is like an aspect of her character that we'd kind of always been hinted at in the first season about like her brother.
this kind of like backs up Karen's like insistence to Matt that he doesn't want to kill, he doesn't want to kill Kingpin because it changes because she killed Wesley, and then we also reveal that she's also like responsible for killing her brother. For this episode,
she's responsible for his death to some extent.
Well, it's manslaughter. Well, she was driving drunk, like high and drunk with him in the car, like
trying to flee a situation.
Yeah, but you're still like drunk and shit. Like you bear. I'm sorry, but if you're driving drunk and you crash the car and you have people in the car with you and they die, that's your fault.
I agree in a real world scenario, but like in the storytelling, I feel like it was more the fact that she had this boyfriend was the bigger part. It was the fact that she had brought this into their lives and created a situation in which they caused her brother to come into for her defense and end up getting basically, if it really comes down to it, was her brother's stupidity that got himself killed.
He was trying to protect her.
Yes, he did it for the right reasons, but it was stupid.
I think she was stupid. Like they were both stupid. How about that?
Yeah, sorry.
Oh no, I was opening it up for you.
So yeah, they're both being dumb at the same time. I mean, he goes and granted, he's probably 16 years old in this.
Yeah.
His arson is his answer for stopping this and de-escalating the situation. Apparently, yeah, that's gonna work.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe if you don't go and burn the guy's trailer down, you're not going to cause him to pull a gun on you, thereby causing Karen to throw you into a station wagon and drive away.
Yeah.
So
there's a whole lot of stupid in that whole storyline. I mean, her dad too. Her dad is the archetype trope of the dreamer that doesn't see the folly of his ways, or doesn't see like how his dreams are going to hurt other people.
It felt like a Dare PSA. This is what happens when you do drugs.
Yeah. Oh, I was going to say this is what happens when you buy a very expensive stove.
You'd be right.
Her dad, the dreamer, played by Chet from the Weird Science TV series. If anybody remembers that.
No. Here's the plot twist for season 4. That stove was manufactured by a shell company owned by Fisk.
Yeah. There you go. That means like this is directly involved in making.
He planned it. He was 20 steps ahead.
I like the whole episode though. I thought that was a nice little portrait of just small town desperation. This Karen's just doing what she's doing because she's bored out of her mind. This town.
Doesn't look like there was much going on there. So yeah,
she perceived herself as the only adult in the room with her family, and that like if she didn't make sacrifices, that her family would basically they just dry up and die, And so she made these great sacrifices, and then kind of in retaliation to that, or like in her own rebellion to that, she kind of just decided to kind of throw her life into just chaos. Like, well, I'm doing all this shit anyways. I'm just gonna have some fun. I'm gonna do some crazy shit that I shouldn't
until
do.
like her family gets sucked up in that chaos, and her brother ends up dead, and her father disowns her.
Yeah.
So I like that they did it felt kind of like a half feature film, right? Like they devoted like 30 straight minutes just to that backstory of Karen. But did anybody else feel like it was completely unnecessary to the rest of the season? Like just that whole backstory had nothing to do with anything.
It didn't really
that
have
happened.
any relevance to the season. You're right.
Yeah, I mean, it just tied into the storyline of as you talked about with Karen admitting to or telling Wilson that she had killed Wesley and stuff, and kind of setting up her kind of self-destructive, showing kind of like the way that
and they also
throw
like
her life away in a
bookended it because I think it came before the episode where Bullseye tries to murder her in the church.
Yeah. So they kind of just like, I think it's just that they had this story in their back pocket and they've been waiting for a time to tell it. And they said, okay, well, Karen's doing something now, so let's throw in an hour-long flashback episode entirely dedicated to her backstory that we've been holding on to all this time.
Yeah.
That was as good a time as any.
I mean, I liked it as far as making me care more about her character, just because she had been really unnecessary to the whole show. I mean, not unnecessary, but she's just someone that was there as an accessory to everybody else, and I was just like, yeah, whatever. At least now I kind of care about her more.
Right.
And that in that way, it served its purpose. It gave you more on Karen and made you care more about the character. But like you said, I agree with you entirely. I loved the episode. I thought it was very well done, but it was wholly unnecessary to anything going on this season.
They should have just done it like I know they're going to be doing a Christmas episode of Sabrina on Netflix. They should have just done a Christmas episode of Daredevil, and it was just Karen's backstory.
Yeah.
No, that's a good idea. I mean, there's nothing stopping them from doing stuff like that.
Yeah,
Still one-off.
yeah. Just like not even as part of the full season package, but just like here, it's Christmas. Here's a bittersweet tale. That's something they could do to kind of get across some of these little backstory things. It would be interesting if they did, but
yeah, without clogging up the main stories.
Anything else about Karen's story, or should we move on to Foggy?
Can we skip Foggy? No, I'm just
No, it's important because Foggy is doing things, right? No, Foggy is trying to do the opposite of Matt, which is he's trying to take on Wilson Fisk through the law, through court. And so he's like really insistent on this, like, oh, the law will work itself out. Justice will work itself out.
If they made a Foggy action figure, he'd have like a button on his back and you touch it and he'd just say like motivational lines about believing in the system.
He basically he throws his hat in for the attorney general, race.
District attorney.
District attorney race. Basically because the other district attorney, he was complicit in like this plot to free Wilson Fisk. And so
he wasn't like the FBI where he
wasn't like straight up bought or bribed or even manipulated.
He was just being a typical dirty politician that thinks over everything else.
Yeah, he was basically he bought the argument the FBI brought him, which is like, oh, he's giving us all this information, and if we just let him out of prison, we'll get so much. You'll be a hero, basically that argument.
Yeah, and Foggy kind of is insisting this isn't the way to handle it. That you can't let Fisk have any leash. You can't give him any room. You give him an inch, he'll take a mile, kind of thing. And you need to put him back in prison. You need to have him on that tight leash. DA is just not going.
Yeah, and then you find out Wilson Fisk has
running for the DA, not even with the intention of winning and taking on that role, but with the intention purely of sparking the debate.
Right.
It's an awkward fit for Foggy this season because he's kind of supposed to be the moral center. He's what Matt left behind. Foggy's left to pick it up, and he's mainly just supposed to be comic relief. That's a tough role to play. I'm not saying that for the actor. I think the actor's great at what he does in the role. He's kind of a smarmy prick, and he plays that well. And asking that guy to be the moral center, though, is asking a lot.
Foggy is also he's out of it most of the time. There's episode the scenes where he's at home with his girlfriend and shit, and he's just just moping and morose.
Mm-hmm.
I was
all my friends dead.
Matt's dead. Kingpin is out. Everything is horrible. Everything sucks.
Except for my good pay job and having a girlfriend in this wonderful apartment of mine. Everything's terrible.
Yeah, everything's terrible.
He's wiping his tears with $20 bills.
Yeah.
And then throwing them straight into a fire.
But we definitely like you said, they're trying to make Foggy the moral center of the season, right? Instead of
there because there's no conflict with Matt. Matt isn't conflicted this season about do I be Matt or do I be Daredevil? Matt's decided to be
Matt's
Daredevil.
Decided I'm Daredevil, I'm gonna murder the shit out of the Kingpin. This is happening. And so Foggy's there to be oh no, don't be Daredevil, don't murder the shit out of the Kingpin, please. We can do this through the law.
Which makes Foggy complicit in the 50,000 people the Kingpin's killed since season one.
It's true.
But he believes in the law and wants to get that done. He runs a campaign that's seems like it's almost successful for the DA, except that, he basically makes one huge blunder when he realizes that Karen basically set herself up for death. He's actually kind of the one that ends up saving Karen when she's confessing to the Kingpin that she had killed Wesley. He's kind of the reason she's able to get out of there.
Yeah. Because he makes a deal with the detective. Yeah, with the NYPD detective who is still on their side and is still against the Kingpin. The one good person.
Well, there's other good people in the police. I think that was kind of a point they were trying to make, is they kind of put all the corruption on the FBI.
Right.
It's in these Marvel shows, in Luke Cage, for instance, we've had tons of shady police officers and Marvel's version of New York City. But then we get to this this show, and it's all the FBI. Like I don't think we had a single corrupt police officer.
That's true.
In this entire season,
which is actually unique for like Marvel Netflix shows. So
yeah, it's kind of surprising. You know, there's always going to be corruption in law enforcement in all of these Marvel Netflix shows, but it's usually been in the police department, and here it's all in the FBI. But yeah, I mean, that's basically Foggy's story. He ran for the DA on a write-in campaign just to kind of spark the debate about, you know, the Kingpin and the fact that he shouldn't be in the position he was in. He should be back in jail. And he ends up getting police support because of that.
There's the one little addendum to that with his family. They also are caught up into this because they take a loan not knowing it is from a Fisco and Shell company, which implicates Foggy's whole family in this.
Yeah, yeah.
We have that also. We have a little slice of life stuff with Foggy going to the Nelson family. Is it a butchery? A butcher shop?
Yeah, it's a butcher shop.
Yeah,
yeah.
It's like a butcher deli. You know,
do we know what
they got on the hook for an oven that they bought pre-owned through.
The same model as the other.
Yeah, same
same oven.
God, you gotta watch out for those ovens, man.
do we know what heritage Foggy is? Because like a lot of those meats look really interesting. That's what I care about.
I think Foggy is Italian.
I thought he was Irish.
Irish. It's
I was
Irish.
going to say Irish, yeah.
Really, I didn't know the Irish had a history of cured meats.
They don't be anybody you want to be.
You know,
Irish Americans, corned beef.
Yeah.
Oh,
okay.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
In the new world, you can be whatever you want to be.
So that's Foggy.
Yeah, so that's kind of Foggy's story. His family got caught up in that whole thing too. That happened kind of late on though. Like we didn't even know about
Very
that
late,
around episode 10 or something.
I'm gonna be waiting for season 4 the main villain to be the griller. This guy just sells grills to families and puts them in unshakable debt.
It's his own show, just Marvel's the Griller.
Yeah. Netflix original cooking show in the MCU.
Yeah, exactly. Goes around and challenges like the other Netflix to like a cook-off, right?
So Luke Cage, you're bulletproof.
Yeah. Daredevil's deviled eggs.
I think Daredevil's going to be in a chili cook-off.
Yeah.
You might be the Daredevil, but can you handle the heat of this chili?
Hell's Kitchen special.
Jessica Jones has got to be like a cocktail or something.
Yeah.
And Iron Fist is just fucking bologna sandwiches or something.
Yeah. It's just Wonder Bread.
Yeah, just Wonder Bread. Well, not anymore for those ones. Not anymore for Luke Cage and Iron Fist, at least. So that kind of wraps up the character stories that we were talking about. We want to talk about some other kind of things that we liked or didn't like or that we just want to talk about in relation to the show. The first thing I wanted to bring up is the long take prison fight, which was fairly early. That was about episode 5, 6,
4.
something like that?
It was like 4.
It was 4, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there's 4 like major set pieces in the season. First was the prison fight. Then there was like the newspaper. I keep wanting to call it the Daily Bugle. I know that's wrong.
Yeah. Church.
Yeah, the church, and then the final fight with Fisk, Bullseye, and Daredevil.
Yeah, those are kind of like the big ones, but I think the biggest one was that long, the best one was that long take prison fight. It was shot as if it was a single take.
Yeah.
It was basically their version of
the hallway fight.
Hallway fight, yeah.
Yeah.
And they brought back one of my favorite things, which is they brought back Tired Matt.
Yes.
That was one of the best things about the episode 2 hallway fight from season 1 was that as he's fighting, you could just see him getting exhausted and leaning against the walls and stuff as he's.
Right, that's what makes it great because because Matt isn't Superman. He's not even Luke Cage. He can't like take on like a bunch of people all at once. Like
it takes a toll.
Yeah, it takes a toll.
And so you see that here. You see this like fight. I thought it was brilliant, except for one little hitch that really kind of annoyed me, and that was the music. It kind of had this weird sweeping, like epic, like almost Batman-esque score kind of going on in the background during the fight. And it just like it wasn't orchestrated for the scene. Yeah, it wasn't orchestrated for the scene. Like if it was orchestrated for the scene, like it might have made more sense, you know? Like if it was live orchestrated, but it wasn't. It was just kind of like music that they just piped in. And I thought it kind of took away a lot from it. I think it would have been better almost if it had just been no music at all. It would have raised the tension. It would have made his being tired and him barely kind of getting it out of rooms and escaping
well, if they had like
that situation after another would have been much more tense.
What if it was like
the music?
Yeah, what if they did like Disturbed, like Indestructible? That made the scene better.
But if they just piped in some like hard rock and metal or something.
Yeah.
You just hear like ooh ah ah ah, and then
yeah, exactly. exactly. I think that would have made the scene somewhat. That would have tied it all together.
That would have made it so much worse.
I think that's starting to remind me of the 2003 movie.
Oh yeah, exactly. Just like pay homage to the Ben Affleck film and just play like Evanescence.
Yeah, it was. I just felt like it was a bad choice. Like it could have played better at silent, or it would have played better if it was like orchestrated to the scene instead of just like music that was just piped in. You know, that just kind of didn't necessarily fit. Like, cause it'd be like these big sweeping moments where he's like leaning against a table, like breathing heavily. It's like, okay, this just feels weird. You know, it just doesn't quite match up. So that took me out of the scene a little bit, but as a whole, the scene was pretty amazing. Just, you know, that's tired Matt Murdock is, I think, my favorite in the fight scenes. I think in every fight scene, Matt Murdock should be like leaning against something and breathing heavily.
Yeah, I thought the scene was like, you know, over. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut across you. I thought the scene was like, you know, over. I thought they were doing a sort of abbreviated one where they started it in the room and you saw the camera pan down to the floor. And once Matt started leaving, I was like, okay, they're ending it there. And then it just kept going.
That was very long. Yeah.
I don't know how long that scene was, but it seemed to go on for like 15 minutes. Probably wasn't. But
and it's like he walked through the entire prison. It's like he could have like exited back out the exit, but he like took a U-turn and like he's like, oh, I haven't seen C-Block yet.
Yeah, it definitely seemed like they did it as a challenge, right? Or like it's one of those things that is like, oh, hey, this is iconic to the Daredevil TV shows. We just have to do it, and we have to do it bigger and better.
Yeah, it's like they were like, okay, how long was that one scene in True Detective season 1? How long was that one in Mr. Robot last season? Okay, we need
Wasn't it the whole episode in Mr. Robot? It was. Yeah. I think it was. I mean, obviously they had moments where they cut.
I don't think it was a whole. I think it was at least half of it. Like I don't.
Might have been the whole episode. I don't remember.
I think it was supposed to be, but I think they had those moments where like they walk through a door, the camera gets really close to the back of the guy, where it's like clearly that's a convenient place to cut. Yeah. But anyway, yeah, they went for that. So I was thinking in this one too, they must have had those at least a couple of places where they could have cut, because there's no way they did the whole prison scene. I mean, how many times did they have to retake that and shoot that over again?
Yeah, they used some clever cuts to get around it. They also did some things like he had his stuntman was in the scenes too, and so like he'd do a kick and roll over a table, and then his stuntman would like jump back and kick another character and then disappear, and then he'd pop up again.
Yeah, the camera work was really clever. Like the camera sometimes gets really close to the ground, and then you don't know what's going on above where the camera is, so that gives them a lot of time to orchestrate the scene. It's really clever, and like I liked it here a lot more than I liked it in the first and second seasons.
Yeah, it really, they put in the work on this one. In the first one, it was almost like you could tell they were kind of like paying homage to like the Raid, and that's kind of what they were doing. And it was a really cool thing, but they didn't, I don't think they expected to get the kind of reaction it did. And then people were like blown away by it in the first season. And the second season, it was almost like they were just trying to kind of one up that, but they didn't really put a lot of heart into it,
Right, yeah.
And then this season, it was like, oh, okay, yeah,
let's try again. Let's try for real this time.
Yeah, and they kind of nailed it. They got the aspects that made it work so well in the first season. Mostly, as I said, Matt being just exhausted through most of the fight.
You know what? Another thing I liked, it's not the same, but it's just another action scene. They even got the tactical shootout scenes. Like there was that time when there's like the traffic jam and he and what's his name? Ray.
That's
are
true.
Trying to make it to the court. That was cool because that was a little different from the usual, melee brawl that they have. It was a little more about, it felt like Winter Soldier with
Yeah,
yeah, you're
the
right.
name of the guy. Yeah, it's more like, hey, lines of sight. I got my assault rifle, my pistol, all this stuff.
and that kind of
It was
had a
very
set piece
tactical.
too, because you saw the whole thing kind of from Fisk's perspective inside the car that was like flipped upside down, and so everything was like
Oh,
shot from inside the car. So
you're talking about the first one. Well. Yeah, that one was great too. That was the introduction of Bullseye, right? When she shows up, just being a total badass.
Yeah, later in the season though, there's the one where he's taking Ray to safety. That's the one Lex is talking about.
To the court to testify. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and people are just going. Yeah, that people are just showing up left and right.
Yeah, and he's always got the drop on. It was very what's the phrase? Very well, it was very Keanu Reeves. What's the name of his movie?
John Wick.
Yeah, dude, it was very John Wick. I like that.
Yeah. John Wick kind of changed things for like the idea of like shooting gunfights like you'd be shooting a martial arts scene.
Yeah, right. They call it gun fu, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I like the variety of fight scenes in this season. I like that they were trying these different things out. You know, like fighting a mob, fighting 1 versus 1. It was way better than fighting ninjas. Just period.
Again, like the fight choreography in this season, like better than anything, like better than Iron Fist. And it should not. Like considering Iron Fist is supposed to be like a legit martial artist, like that's sad when you think about it. Like,
it's a good point though too, because like if Iron Fist, like let's say Iron Fist was done to its best, like let's say it had a competent showrunner both seasons. You know, it wasn't like how they had like Scott Buck in the first season.
They had like Daredevil showrunner. like
well, let's just say they had any like really competent showrunner, and it's just done to its absolute best. If they did a fight scene like the prison fight that we were talking about, the long take shot, that wouldn't make sense for Iron Fist, because Iron Fist isn't like a brawler. He's supposed to be smooth like a martial artist. So like this kind of a fight, that kind of fight, like something that's very visceral like that, like you'd have in like the Raid, wouldn't really make sense in Iron Fist. I don't.
Well, I mean, okay.
And like Daredevil's more the Raid, and Iron Fist at its best, what it should be is like closer to like Crouching Tiger, you know? It's like, it should be a bit kind of over the top and ridiculous because it's supposed to be this like almost mythical martial art versus like what Daredevil's doing, which is like survival brawl.
Right, yeah. I mean, Iron Fist was straight up, I guess, an homage, right? To all those like kung fu movies, or not kung fu movies, but yeah, man, I forgot the term for it, but those martial arts movies with a philosophy.
The string movies.
Yeah.
The wirework movies.
Yes, wirework movies. And, I mean, hopefully, well, I guess the show got canceled, but I haven't seen season 2, so you're telling me it was still bad in terms of the choreography for Iron Fist?
Season 2 is notable.
Season 2 was a notable improvement. It's just, I just think like Daredevil, like is still better. Like
season 2 is a notable improvement over season 1 with Iron Fist, but that's not saying much.
It still didn't blow me.
Season 1 was so bad that it's like anything even remotely competent is a step up, and so it's better. It
still doesn't blow me. I wouldn't like say like season 2 like has memorable fight scenes or anything, but it's still like it's a step up.
It has competent workman-like scenes in season 2. Whereas this was a real episode 4 in Daredevil season 3. That's a showpiece. That's one you're going to talk about. Does it compare to this for a couple of years down the line? This is a really good one, I thought.
Yeah, season 2 of Iron Fist was like competent, whereas like the definition of season 1 of Iron Fist was incompetent.
Right. Oh, so the term was wuxia, right? Wuxia
that's
films.
it.
And I've seen a few. I was into them. Besides watching Jackie Chan movies, I've seen a few wuxia movies, and that's what I was expecting from the Iron Fist original, and that's what I wish it was. It would be really cool if they actually did it.
They did make a straight up wuxia series on TV though. Did you ever see Into the Badlands?
No.
That show is straight up wuxia. If you like that stuff, that's what it is. And it's actually like Woping does the choreography. Who's the guy that did choreography in Crouching Tiger and The Matrix, and he's like one of the big wuxia guys, and he did the actual choreography and stuff for that show.
Is this on Netflix?
I'm not sure. It's on AMC. I'm not sure where all seasons are streaming.
I'll look them up for sure.
Yeah, that's if you want that kind of stuff on like an episodic basis. That's probably your best bet. Besides some of the high budget shows coming out of China right now, but there's also those. But yeah, so the fights in general really good in this season. A lot of notable ones we can point out. Like we pointed out right off the bat, like, oh, there's like 4 or 5 in these different set pieces that are good. And then you brought up the gunfight outs, both the one where Wilson Fisk is in the car upside down and the other one where he's bringing him across the town. That's a lot more, you know. It's getting to like, you know, 5 set pieces and a travel action scene, you know, to show like how good these can actually be. One thing to add to the long take prison fight, though, is the whole, like, no safety aspect. He gets out of the fight, jumps back into the cab, basically passes out, and wakes up and is like, I can't remember exactly what it was. His driver was either dead or, like, was not in the car at all. And,
that was a strange sort of plot hole. I think the driver wasn't in the car, but 2 of Fisk's guys was. So instead of just shooting Matt and killing him while he was unconscious, they take the cab out and just drive him into the water.
Yeah, it was kind of strange. I thought, like looking back on it, I guess my brain rationalized it as that, like, the driver was just dead or something. And the car was going off the edge.
No. It was a goon for sure. And he could have just shot him. Like, just kill him and then drive it off the edge. He's asleep. Just do it now. This is your one chance.
Matt and Fisk just have this thing, man. They're just not going to kill the other one. They can't bring themselves to do it. It's a love story for our time.
It's like Batman, you know. It truly is a love story.
Have you seen those commercials for, I think it's for like car insurance or something, where it's like a Bond villain and he's all like, you know, I'm going to kill you, but first my elaborate plan, and he brings out like a slide machine. And
Yeah, this fits into that.
Yeah, it's like territory of like, you know, just shoot him in the fucking head. You don't have to.
I think they get away, like Fisk gets away with it because it's not actually him, right? He's just telling people like, hey, Felix, just get rid of that guy. And then somehow the orders just get passed completely. Fisk is like, why didn't you just shoot him, right? Like, I would expect him to just ask, like, hey, Felix, how come you didn't just shoot him? Like,
I have to imagine that there was another character who had his head covered by a coat and bashed in that we just didn't see on screen.
Also, in fairness, they might have wanted to make it look like an accident. That works.
Yeah,
so maybe I've answered my question. But anyway.
Yeah, you know, you could have put him behind the wheel and then just rationalized it as, hey, he's blind. He tried to drive for some reason.
That would only make sense if the show took place in Florida.
Jacksonville, J-Town.
Yeah, so is there any other fights you wanted to bring up or any other particular scenes that you guys
obviously we already touched on the fight in the newspaper office, which, you know, you point out was ridiculous because of Bullseye, like...
I thought that part was ridiculous, Bullseye. But before that, when he was just mowing through the office, I thought that was brutal.
Yeah, that was brutal. That was a brutal scene, especially, like, again, like, it was so tense because, like he kicks Matt's ass, knocks him the fuck out, and then he goes on to murder, like, the guy, like, they were trying to protect, who was, like, a witness against Wilson Fisk.
Yeah.
And there's, like, a moment where, like, you think he's gonna kill Karen, but he doesn't. He just, like, says, hi, Karen, and he, like, leaves.
Nice to see you again, Karen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just all intentional just to fuck with her. That's also before Fisk knew that, she had killed Wesley.
Yeah, that's before, like, Fisk officially puts a hit out on her. Which leads to the second, like, major thing. And also, like, it's a major moment because, again, the second fight between Daredevil and Bullseye happens in the church, where Bullseye is trying to kill Karen. And again, he mows through people in the church. But he also kills, like, the priest, who's, like, Matt's, like, most trusted, like, you know, Matt grew up with this guy.
His father figure.
He's his father figure. He's, like, his most trusted confidant, you know, that we saw in season 1. And Bullseye just kills him.
Of course, he saw the death flag because they had a big blowout fight.
Yeah.
There was, like, you could see the death flag, like, growing out of his head as they were arguing.
Yeah. Before that, they have, like, a big fight. And this is important. We didn't even touch on this. We didn't even touch on the character of Sister Maggie, who was there.
I brought her up just briefly. Like, I didn't bring up any details about her.
Yeah, who was there from the beginning of the season, you know, like, tending to Matt as he healed from having a building collapse on him. But we find out, like, she is actually, like, his mother. And
this all happens right before this fight.
This all happens right before this fight. This is why Matt and the priest, you know, like, got into a fight because he knew, and he relates to the backstory. You know, we get a flashback where, you know, like, we find out, like, what happened, how that relationship began, how she was forced to basically give Matt up as an orphan.
Mm-hmm.
Or, no, she not as an orphan because he still has dad at that point.
Well,
Like, she was basically forced to give up Matt, you know, and basically, like, hide the fact that she was his mother from him, you know.
She had postpartum depression.
Yeah, she had postpartum depression. She thought, she saw Matt as, like, you know, because she sinned, right?
Yeah, as a representation of her sin.
As a representation of her sin.
You can't have Daredevil without Catholic guilt.
So this led to Matt not only having Catholic guilt, but also having, like, you know, mommy issues. You know.
Yeah, because she didn't claim him when his father died, you know, which would have been a big thing.
Like, she just let him be an orphan, right?
Yeah, and she was there for him. She was
there,
but not as his mother.
But not as his mother, yeah.
And so this is what led to, you know, like I said, the death flag being planted on the father's head. Yeah, so another brutal fight in the church. It didn't quite have the body count that the press office one did, where they just killed like everybody. But yeah, the priest's death was significant. And then they also had the whole lockdown event where the church was locked down by the FBI at that point. That was when Nadim was under Fisk's control and having to follow through with that. And you saw like how Karen and Matt were like basically barely able to get out of there. And yeah. So that was another big set piece fight. You had mentioned, I know the fight that you wanted to talk about before we even started the podcast more though, was kind of like the last big fight in the season, which was the one that took place in Kingpin's office. This, of course, to set up what happened before, because we didn't bring this up, is we had talked about the fact that Kingpin had killed this girl that Dex was obsessed with, but Matt found that out. He found the body and then led Dex to it so he could discover it for himself and to see that Kingpin had manipulated him. And of course, Dex, just being a complete psychopath, just takes her body with him and is communicating with her as he's driving it to Fisk's place where he's having his wedding. And he just kind of storms in and Matt's just kind of almost using him
again, what's amazing is like Matt manages to manipulate Bullseye.
He's just kind of like hiding behind him, Bullseye's going through, just like killing people, making his way through
because
the building.
Because they make it a point.
Like Daredevil around the corner.
Because Daredevil breaks into the hotel earlier in the season, you know, when Wilson Fisk is out there with all the other like crime bosses, and he's trying to lure Daredevil into a trap. Mm-hmm. And instead of like going into that trap, Daredevil breaks into Fisk's hotel, gets into like his secret room, you know, and basically decides he's gonna wait there until Fisk comes back, and then he's gonna kill Fisk when he least expects it, except Karen is in that church and she's going to get killed by Bullseye. So
for the second time in a row, Karen basically made somebody else's plan go awry by just being somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. Which forces his hand. And in that scene, like, the woman who Fisk has in his secret lair, she basically tells Matt that, like, you know, Fisk is going to know he was here and that, you know, he's not going to be able to get back in a second time. You know, there's going to be so much security the next time, it's going to be impossible. So this is Matt's plan to get back in, is to just use Bullseye to clear a path for him.
Like a battering ram.
Yeah, like a battering ram. Yeah.
It's just funny because you see Dex go through like clearing house, and then it just stays on that shot, and then you see like Daredevil like walking behind.
Yeah,
he's like, he's fine, like just walking.
Pretty brilliant, actually.
I thought it was almost a plot hole at first. I'm like, why is Matt making his life this much more difficult by just like going through this with Bullseye there? It's sort of like, I don't know if they mention it or it's very briefly mentioned, perhaps, but Bullseye, because he worked for the FBI, knows all the security protocols, knows exactly how to get into Fisk's place.
Right.
So that's why it actually makes sense for him to be there to be the big 1v1v1 at the end.
Exactly. Like, they make it a point to say, like, it would be impossible for Matt to get in there by himself again. So that's why he uses Bullseye.
Yeah.
Gotta have him.
Yeah. And also, it just makes sense because, you know, that's, even if Matt could pull it off by himself, it's again like he's pointing like Wilson Fisk's attack dog back at him. Like that's, aside from like how convenient, that's also convenient as a distraction, right?
Yeah.
So Fisk is distracted, dealing with something else, which better allows Matt to get the jump on him.
Doesn't quite work out that way at the end, but.
No, it doesn't quite work. Well, what's happened is because like Matt can't just let Bullseye like completely do his work. So like Bullseye, like every time Bullseye goes to like kill somebody or something, Matt like jumps him, you know. It's pretty funny. And then you get finally
only in the final fight. He doesn't do anything to protect the other like FBI agents and stuff that are on guard.
No, because Fisk's life is 100 times more important than anybody else's life.
Exactly.
It only counts if you save the supervillain. Nobody else's life counts.
His surviving proves his point about justice. That's why his life matters more than the people that are actually
there's your plot hole.
It's not a plot hole, it's a moral hole.
A moral hole.
Matt had to get there just to show Fisk that he wasn't going to kill him.
Exactly. So he's just, everybody else dying, it just doesn't matter. They're just people there.
But the final fight is, like, pretty awesome because you have, like, Matt's trying to kill Kingpin, Bullseye is trying to kill Kingpin, Matt is trying to prevent, and Bullseye is also trying to kill, primarily Bullseye is trying to kill Kingpin's new wife because that is the revenge because Kingpin killed the woman Bullseye most, his North Star, and so like his form of revenge is like, and Matt's responsible for playing this idea in his head in the first place, is like he's gonna kill Vanessa, and the idea to kill Vanessa came from Matt in the first place. So like again, Matt's trying to claim some moral superiority by not killing, but he literally sent an assassin to kill somebody. So I don't.
I told you, inscrutable. Matt cannot be understood. I don't get this character.
I think he's supposed to represent the Catholic Church.
Yes, he does a perfect job.
Season 4 is gonna start molesting boys.
Oh God, no!
He's gonna find a way to justify it. Yeah. One episode he pardons the gays. Next episode.
But it's a fun fight because the entire time, like, Matt's trying to kill Kingpin, and then Bullseye is trying to kill Kingpin and kill his wife. And every time Bullseye like tries to make a play to kill either of them, like Matt jumps him and stops him, and then we see Kingpin get some good hits in. We see Kingpin like basically pick up Bullseye and like fucking ram him into a wall.
He banged him.
He banged him.
Oh yeah.
You heard him, yeah.
Yeah, he heard him.
I was wondering what would break first.
He banged him. Yeah. He basically eventually like Kingpin like fucking like breaks Bullseye's spine and paralyzes him, which is like, and at first I didn't get that. So like at the end, like when Matt is like about to kill Kingpin but he doesn't, I'm like, what about Bullseye? He's gonna get back up. Like, and then that doesn't happen, and then I realized, and when I got to the last scene, I realized I was like, oh, Bullseye didn't get up because his spine was broken. Okay.
Yeah.
He was paralyzed.
Yeah.
I don't get the part where Bullseye was getting corrective surgery and all of that shit, even though he's supposed to be in custody.
I know in the comic books, Bullseye has an adamantium spine.
That's what they're doing here. They're giving him an adamantium
so probably
spine.
something like a secretive military, something
it's
similar to like what we saw in not Daredevil, the Jessica Jones season.
Yeah, like some fucking extra military organization like took him into custody and is enhancing him now or some shit.
I can buy that just because it's Marvel.
Yeah.
There's got to be setup for the next seasons. Oh, I got one question for you guys.
It's Hydra.
At some point in the season, Kingpin asks, I can't remember who it is. He asks somebody, like, go take care of the Daredevil, and if you need help, ask our friends. Oh, he tells that to Felix, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Who did he mean? He didn't just mean random goons that show up at the traffic jam, right?
Our friends. I missed that or forgot about it. I don't recall which.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm
because
in the same boat as Mike here.
Because they gave, when he tells that to Felix gets a reaction shot like, oh shit. So, I'm assuming it's supposed to be a hint to like a
Felix is all, oh shit, son.
Yeah. Basically.
Don't Leroy Jenkins this. Call our friends.
Yeah. So yeah, I was wondering, like, if you guys knew, that would have been cool. But if not, I'll just wait. I don't care that much.
Yeah, you got me on that one.
It's not ringing any bells for me right now. So.
Can't say that I know. Yeah, I'm in the same boat as Mike here, where it's like I either missed that or just don't remember it.
Yeah.
Well, I had subtitles on because I can't stand these shows. They do go a little. I don't know why it's a thing now for TV shows to be really high on the low end. as far as voices go.
Mhm.
So everything sounds muffled. So I always turn
because
on
it's more dramatic that way, right? It's like more dramatic when people are like,
yeah.
It's like, like I can barely hear this person, so what they're saying is like super meaningful.
I know what they said, but it sounds scary.
Super meaningful way.
Do you know that Netflix has an option for the visually impaired where it actually like reads it out like an audiobook? So like between moments of dialogue, it'll say Daredevil walks through and does this or something.
I didn't know that.
They have it on some of their shows. I don't think it's on all of them, but I'm pretty sure it's on the Marvel shows.
Okay, I learned something new today.
So if you ever want to like rewatch it, but you don't want to use your eyes,
I want to use my eyes.
That's the Daredevil mode.
Yeah, pretty much. Makes more sense for that than anything else, I'm sure. So speaking of sound, one of the things that I was really picking up on earlier in the season, I don't think it was as much the case later on. They did a lot with sound in this season, and I was thinking about how they had done a lot with like color. Like, did you guys all saw The Defenders, right?
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
One of the things they did well on The Defenders, like one of the few things they did really well on The Defenders, was every time it would cut to like a different character's story, like they used a different kind of like a color scheme for like
they had like a different color for every character, right?
Yeah, like Matt's was all like I think with like a red, and
yeah, obviously
Luke's was with like a yellow, I think.
Luke Cage is yellow.
Jessica's was like the purple.
Yeah, Jessica's was purple. Yeah, purple man.
And so you could like see this
Iron Fist is like
shift.
green, I think.
Yeah, you could see this notable color shift when it would cut.
You call him the Iron Chef?
The Iron Chef.
Iron Chef. If only that was the case. If
the Iron Chef is the next Netflix Marvel series.
Is it going to be like Morimoto, like the Japanese one?
Yeah, it's going to be Morimoto. And he's going to be like fighting crime with like fucking a skillet.
He's going to be fighting against the host that like takes the bite out of the pepper.
Yeah. Yeah, he's the ultimate bad guy. He's the ultimate villain of the MCU.
He throws scorpion peppers at people.
Yes.
He's en cuisine. Defenders had done that with color, and so I was noticing in the early parts of this season, though, that they were doing a lot with sound, and they kind of had to for some because Matt had just been in an exploding building, so even he had his vision gone, and now his hearing was all kind of muffled and messed up, and they were doing a lot with playing with the idea of like how he was adapting to being able to like kind of move around and use his senses again with his hearing all kind of messed up and muffled, and so that was a big part of his like brooding storyline, is him having like a little boxing match and having these other things where he couldn't quite reach his full potential because he couldn't hear properly. And you got to see several moments where you're kind of like hearing things from his perspective. But my favorite part of what they did with sound was in Kingpin's introduction in season 3, where they had all the noise of the prison and it cut. And then you see like, I think they started with like classical music or something. And you see Kingpin like, and he's delicately cutting the food and stuff. And then all that sound starts coming in from the outside, all the kind of riotous sound from the prison. And you can just see the agitation in his hands as he's delicately cutting this meat and eating it, and he just screams out for everybody to shut up, and just the entire place goes silent. Yeah, and it was like a great scene, and it had just come on the heels of all of these scenes with like Matt having to deal with his hearing being impaired now after
with the right speaker, where I was checking the cables, making sure that they weren't torn.
So I was enjoying the scene, and you're like, God damn stereo, what's going on?
Yeah, damn headphones.
I was more just in, I really wanted to go buy a neti pot after that Matt scene, because I want superpowers to come back to me too. It's amazing.
Yeah, I'm like, when I did that, nothing happened.
All those origin things never work, man. I tell you how many irradiated spiders I've had bite me, it just doesn't work. You just end up with a really big infection. And
yeah. Well, I ate Papa John's once and had about a couple of days of that, but gave me they called me explosive diarrhea after that day.
It's like that old episode of Family Guy where like all the Griffiths gain like the superpowers, and then Adam West becomes the one guy who can take them on, and so he rolls around in toxic waste. And then like the next shot is like him in the hospital, and they're like, no, you have stage 4 cancer. Did anybody else have anything they wanted to kind of bring up about the season? Because we're kind of at the end here as far as what I have on my show notes and everything.
I really enjoyed the season up through the Karen episode. I think in the last 3 episodes, they just sort of made it more difficult on themselves than they needed to. Like, they had a resolution with Nadeem going to talk to that jury, but then they just had to find a way to keep it going for 3 more episodes. So
we needed the big final showdown with.
Yeah, they had to write it in, so they needlessly complicated it at the end, I thought. Otherwise, I thought this was really good.
That's a typical like length issue with Netflix, where we've talked about this before. It's just like all the Marvel Netflix shows, they run too long. Like there are too many episodes, then they end up like repeating themselves, and you know, it's the kind of thing you usually see on network dramas that are like that have to do 22 episodes, but it's like these are only 13 episodes, but in most cases they should probably be somewhere between 8 and 10. You know?
Yeah,
agreed.
They could have comfortably cut this down to like 10, and it would have been really good. You know?
Yeah, that's I think a bigger thing that like sticks in my craw. This could have been 10 episodes of the best thing Marvel, maybe period, has done. I really liked what the good stuff here. The highs are really high, but then it goes on too long. It drags too long. There's just too much stuff that doesn't belong in there. It's a really good. That's my problem with it.
I still think it's like the best of. I still think it's the best Marvel Netflix show. Like, probably the best, like, Marvel show overall.
I think I liked The Punisher better, but the last episode of The Punisher was just worse. It just brought it down too much, but overall, I thought The Punisher was.
The Punisher was building up, like, towards the end. It was getting, like, super brutal in, like, an awesome way, and then it kind of just slowed down really quick.
Well, and it ended, and then it had, like, the first episode of season 2 thrown in there for some reason.
Yeah.
Like, the last episode shouldn't have been there. They should have put it off. But it's it's the same thing. It's a Netflix show.
But particularly the Netflix Marvel shows. Yeah, it's definitely. If you look at like most of the Netflix shows now are like running like 10 episode seasons, but the only Netflix Marvel ones that aren't 13 are Defenders, which was 8, and that was like
8 episodes. It should have been like no episodes.
Yeah. And Iron Fist Season 2, which is 10. But other than that, every single one's been 13 episodes, and every single one has run too long. Like, even the best ones, even when you're like, oh, Daredevil Season 1, even that season ran too long. You know, Season 2 definitely ran too long. Jessica Jones. Season 1 of Jessica Jones was great. That was my personal favorite of all the Netflix shows. Because I dug the portrayal of like PTSD and stuff in that. But ran too long. It started kind of repeating itself, started getting convoluted at the end. It started feeling like a Gundam series by the end. How like a Gundam series, like, it gets really interesting with the kind of the political divide, and then like it just switches sides, and it's like, okay, this is just getting kind of silly now.
Yeah, like I can never get in Gundam.
Gundam's always one of those things where just like watch the first half and then stop.
So, what do you guys think? I mean, are you guys excited for any future Marvel Netflix show?
I really don't know if we're getting anything except for we know we're getting one more season of Jessica Jones and one more season of Punisher for sure.
Yeah, they haven't even announced like if they're doing another season of Daredevil, which, considering how long Daredevil season 3's been out, is concerning at this point.
Well, apparently the guy just pitched it. He just pitched season 4, and he's just like, let's see what happens.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, we'll see what happens. But Netflix is usually like, something is like doing good when like, because they already announced Castlevania season 3. They announced it right after they put season 2 up on Netflix.
Sabrina season 2 was announced like before season 1 came out, I think, and
yeah.
It was another one that was just announced recently where they announced another season. I can't remember what it was.
So I don't know.
It was Big Mouth.
House of Cards got canceled, and then it still got another season.
They were debating between just cutting Kevin Spacey out or replacing him with what was that one actor that did it in the one movie?
Did they find any actors that had him harassed someone?
Oh no, it's Christopher Plummer. That was what I was gonna say. Like they did that one movie, like All the Money in the World or whatever, and after the scandal happened with Kevin Spacey, they cut him from the movie and replaced him with Christopher Plummer. And then it became kind of like a joke of like whenever like an actor does something wrong, just replace him with Christopher Plummer. And so they had like this one picture as Christopher Plummer, and it just said Roseanne over it. And people were saying that should happen to House of Cards, just replace Kevin Spacey with Christopher Plummer. But yeah, they do all sorts of like a lot of announcements. Netflix will oftentimes do it before a season airs, or they'll do it pretty quickly. I mean, like the new one I was thinking of was Big Mouth, which had its second season aired a couple months ago. I think came out a couple months ago, and they just announced season 3 for that. And that was kind of like, oh, that kind of felt late, because usually they're announcing it like before the season even airs. Like, oh, and there's another season coming. So it is a little concerning that Daredevil's hasn't been confirmed for season 4, especially because Iron Fist and Luke Cage both canceled.
Yeah, did any of this at all to you perhaps feel like it could have been a series finale instead of a season?
Yeah, it did.
It did to me too. I thought about that, after we heard about Luke Cage especially. Iron Fist being canceled didn't surprise me. Luke Cage being canceled did surprise me. They had a real setup there for that next season.
Iron Fist was tragic just because, without spoiling anything for you, Alex, the season wasn't necessarily that great, like season 2. The way it kind of ended was pretty bad, but then they had an epilogue scene that was this is everything Iron Fist should have been from the very beginning.
Yeah, which they were going to take it in an interesting direction, but
it was like finally we have Iron Fist, and then it's canceled.
Yes, so the way this season Daredevil ends, there's no grand setup for another season. There's threads obviously left dangling to where they can explore. Obviously, they have that scene with Bullseye, but that's all they are. There's threads that they could pick up and weave into another season, but there's no grand. There's no grand Iron Fist style. Oh shit, son! Now this shit happened, and we gotta find out how it plays out in next season. No, that doesn't happen.
Yeah, so it would be kind of weird. What I always thought they should do is they should take a lesson from kind of what Marvel's doing now, which is after they got all the Avengers together, then they did every character's kind of second season. And I think during the process of that, they kind of realized, or second movie, they kind of realized, oh, this kind of feels strange now that we know all these other characters know each other. So then they started doing things like Thor Ragnarok, where you have Thor and the Hulk teamed up, or Civil War, where you have a bunch of the characters kind of coming in. And it could still be a Captain America movie, but it also has this other thing. Or the Thor movie is definitely a Thor movie, but it also has this Hulk team up, where it's to the point where you could go well, in the comics, what everybody wanted to see happen on Netflix it was Heroes for Hire, which was Luke Cage and Iron Fist teaming up. And that was probably the best part, or one of the best parts of Iron Fist season 2. Was when they finally nailed Iron Fist in that one episode where he showed up in Luke Cage season 2. I always thought that's what they should be doing more. They need more crossover. They need to kind of make them less. We don't need another Defenders. We definitely don't need another Defenders. but have characters show up because they're all there. There's points where you're watching some of these later seasons and you're kind of this just doesn't even make sense that this character isn't here. In Iron Fist season 2, there's parts where you're it doesn't even make sense that Luke Cage didn't show up at this point. It makes less sense that he doesn't show up than if he does. It's not even just it would be cool if he showed up. It's it doesn't make sense that he's not there. And that's kind of in the territory we're at right now. And so I'd hope that kind of stuff would cross over. The fact that both of those shows were canceled, I don't think there's much hope that they're going to launch a Heroes for Hire. You didn't like this show and you didn't like this other show, but what if they were together?
Yeah.
I don't think that's necessarily going to happen, but I think some crossover might, be better. I think it'd be interesting if, we saw Jessica Jones pop up in Daredevil or something, just for an episode or for a scene or something, or more cross-pollination of the characters. We see a little bit, but not too much. Besides Claire, who's kind of on break now, and Turk, who's been in every single season of every Marvel Netflix show.
Well, as long as they bring Daredevil back, I'll be happy. It doesn't need to have the crossovers. That'd be nice. I just want to hear that it's coming back first, because I do want to see where the character goes from here. Because Matt, is he going to go back and be the chill guy we see here at the end of the season, or is he going to?
I hope so.
Does he have heat in him to go out and constantly beat the shit out of people?
Season 4, he's just taking Pilates lessons.
Well, he's still gonna go out and beat the shit out of people. That's Daredevil. But he cannot go back to being broody emo Matt from the beginning of this season, because that would be a complete character regression. There's nothing worse than having a story regress like that. There has to be character.
Like the Batman?
There has to be character progression at all times,
Maybe they could just do movies, original movies for Netflix. Here's a 2-hour Daredevil movie. And it's just a single insular story. It doesn't need the full 13, episodes, the full length. You don't need to create this big brooding story. You have kind of the story that involves him both kind of in court and also outside of court. And you just kind of do these little 2-hour movies, do them every so often or something, you know? There's lots of ways they can handle it. I'm just hoping that they find some way to continue it and not just cancel it off like they did with Luke Cage and Iron Fist, which I think hurt the whole Marvel Netflix brand. I think both of those did. Iron Fist especially, but Luke Cage as well even. Because Luke Cage kind of had a weird turn in its first season where all of a sudden it replaced a nuanced villain with a fucking Looney Tunes character. So I think both of those like kind of did a lot of damage to kind of just the whole brand of the Marvel Netflix show. And it'd be nice for them to find some way to continue it, even if they're like, okay, we can't justify doing 13 more episodes of Daredevil, then hey, give us a movie.
You know what? I kind of just want to wait until they can start doing X-Men, Netflix series.
I don't think we're going to get that. I think
ever.
Well, have you heard any of the news about the stuff that's coming to Disney's new streaming service?
No.
They're going much bigger budget. Like they're doing
Loki series with Tom Hiddleston. Yeah. They're doing like I think Bucky and Falcon.
Yeah, they're doing a Winter Soldier and Falcon series. Really? They're doing a Scarlet Witch series, all with the actors from the movies, and all of the series are supposed to be like really like HBO scale budgets. So
yeah, well, they said like HBO
like
scale
TV series. It's probably going to be on Disney.
No, they didn't say HBO scale. They said like feature film scale, like the scale like they spend on the actual films.
Yeah, like 100+ million, but that's also HBO scale now.
yeah, true. With Game of Thrones, that's HBO scale. They're throwing Game of Thrones money at this basically. So these are going to be like, and these Disney series like there's a distinction because like Daredevil, Iron Fist, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. it all comes from Marvel Entertainment, which is the TV division under Ike Perlmutter. And the Disney stuff that's coming from Marvel Studios,
under Kevin Feige,
who exclusively just do the movies. So it's gonna be
Marvel
definitely.
Studios also did Agent Carter though.
Yeah, was that? No, I thought that was like Perlmutter.
That was Marvel Studios did Agent Carter.
Okay,
it's kind of lesser known, but that's why it had like stuff like Industrial Light and Magic did the special effects and stuff.
Yeah, so this is Marvel Studios, so this is gonna be higher priority.
Yeah. Bigger budget, higher priority. And unlike this stuff, it's actually going to kind of cross over with the actual stuff in the movies.
Yeah. Because Disney is pulling out all the stops to make their streaming service successful. They're pulling out the big guns. They even got like a big budget Star Wars series coming to it. They're using all their cards.
Yeah. Anything Disney connected and X-Men's going to fall under that, as Disney's buying out Fox right now. Anything that's kind of Disney connected that's going to be big is going to be on Disney's streaming service, like moving forward. You're still going to have some stuff like, Cloak and Dagger is on Freeform.
Yeah. Freeform is also
on Hulu, that stuff.
Yeah, but again, Freeform is owned by Disney. Hulu is owned by Disney now.
Yeah, now that they're buying Fox, they're going to.
Now they're buying Fox. Yep, they own Hulu.
And I'm sure they'll keep, if Netflix decides to keep stuff like Daredevil around, they'll keep that deal going with Netflix.
it makes like Netflix is like the only non-Disney owned entity that has like Marvel stuff airing on it. So they said, this isn't like Disney doing it. Like Iron Fist and Luke Cage getting canceled, that wasn't like a Disney decision. It was a Netflix decision. And it's been pretty clear that Netflix can keep these shows if they want to, so they can keep making Daredevil, but that's on Netflix. So Disney isn't gonna, doesn't have any plans to just yank the license away from Netflix.
Fingers crossed that they bring more Daredevil then, man. I want
it.
Yeah, that would be nice. That's pretty much it. So that's kind of our final thoughts on Daredevil season 3. So I think pretty much going around the room, it seems like we all liked it. We all had kind of issues with it in general, but overall, I imagine we all liked it. I say I do. Mike just said that he's looking for a season 4. Will said he really liked it. Alex, you seemed a little bit more down on it.
No, I really liked it. I thought it was my second best after The Punisher.
Okay. This season in particular?
Was it?
This season in particular or Daredevil in general?
No, this season, yeah. I liked it better than season 1 and way better than season 2.
Good.
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah.
I think I came into season 1 a little later than everybody else, so I wasn't caught off guard by, oh shit, it's an actual, quality Marvel TV show.
Yeah, no, I wasn't. I watched it first. Several things, reasons. Obviously I was a Marvel junkie, and also when I heard Stephen S. DeKnight was behind the first season of Daredevil, I was like, oh shit, this is gonna be amazing.
Yeah, have either of you seen the Spartacus series? It was on Stars.
No.
It is amazing.
It's an amazing series. It's it's like, if you watch the first episode, you'll be like, why did Tyson and Will recommend this so much?
Yeah.
But then if you stick with it for a while, you'll be like, oh, I get it. Like, it's...
People hate, like, the first few episodes because, like, it is like, cheesy, sleazy soap opera drama and you start to think, like, this is gonna be so bad. This is
it
gonna
just
be
looks
terrible.
like a really bad TV show ripoff of the 300, basically.
Yeah.
Like it.
You're like, this is gonna be so bad, but then, like, I'm not sure, like, when it's, like, 3 or, like, 4 episodes in, it suddenly becomes amazing. And then it just keeps being amazing. And then you're like, oh my god, this is like one of the best shows ever made.
It's kind of like the quote I always like to use. I always like to say that it's a show that's better than it has any right being.
Yes.
Like, it should not be as good as it is. Like, it just shouldn't. Like, if you just look at the individual ingredients, it's like, this show should not be good, but it's amazing.
So, yeah, exactly.
And that was Stephen S. Knight. That's what he did before Daredevil season 1. He didn't do the other Daredevil seasons, just season 1.
He didn't do the other seasons, but you know, he set the tone, he set the template for the others to follow. And it shows, like, because I really thought, like, out of the initial batch of, like, Netflix shows, I thought Daredevil season 1 was the best. I know Tyson really likes Jessica Jones season 1. I had some issues with that. Like, some of the pacing was off and, you know, but yeah, I just really loved the first season of Daredevil. Season 2 was obviously a lot weaker. Stephen S. Knight left and it lacked some focus or direction because it didn't know. I think one of the problems with season 2 was it didn't know whether it wanted to do Punisher or it wanted to just go with Hand. So it tried to do both. And the Punisher stuff was, like, really good, but the Hand stuff was, like, really bad.
But I think part of what made the Punisher stuff so good is, like, the actual Punisher storyline, besides the stuff when he was in jail and stuff, all of that took about 3 or 4 episodes.
Yeah.
So if they had tried to stretch that over 13 episodes, that might not have been as great as...
That's true. That's true. You got a point there.
But in general, that just means we all liked this season of Daredevil, besides having a few misgivings about just kind of certain little touches here and there. Certain little things that maybe didn't make as much sense as we'd like them to. But yeah, it was a good season, and I think we're all hoping that we're going to get a season 4 out of it.
Yeah, so, definitely.
That's the end of our discussion. So like we always do, here's what's coming up on the week ahead. We're recording this on Saturday, so it's a little off because we always start the week ahead on Friday. So yesterday, on Friday, November 16, 2018, The Kaminsky Method hit Netflix. That is, it's Michael Douglas, isn't it? And it's like it's from the creator of The Big Bang Theory, the guy who also ended up doing the theme song for the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I always like to bring up. Also, Narcos Mexico came out. That's with Michael Pinwa, I think, isn't it? He's the main guy in this one. Did you guys watch Narcos? I know Alex translated like a comic strip I did about Narcos for me.
Yeah, I only saw parts of. I can't remember if it was season 2 or 3.
Okay, yeah. So was Pablo Escobar in it? Because then that would be season 2.
I don't think he was. No, okay, I think this was season 3.
Okay. So yeah. So this is like I guess this is their version. This is like CSI, like New York. This is Narcos Mexico. So instead of Colombia, it's going to be about the Mexican cartels.
All I want is for Diego Luna not to get shot, man. It's getting too close.
I don't want the actors to get shot. Apparently, it's been pretty dangerous.
Oh yeah. I mean, somebody already died, right? Like a cameraman died scouting in Mexico.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that. That was like a year ago.
Yep.
Yeah, it's dangerous territory, man. But that's Narcos Mexico, Netflix. She-Ra and the Princesses of Power hit Netflix as well. I saw somebody on Game Note saying that that's actually good, and I was kind of like, I have no interest in watching She-Ra and the Princesses of Power.
Bring back He-Man. Like that was my childhood. Like I was obsessed with He-Man when I was like, I don't know, 5.
Yeah, but if they're gonna bring back He-Man or She-Ra in the current climate, you know it's gonna be She-Ra.
Well, yeah, obviously.
That's the climate we're in, you know? That's what makes more sense for that. But that's back. Just be thankful they didn't bring back He-Man with like that weird art style they did with the new Thundercats.
Oh god, no. Jesus. I don't even know what the hell was behind that, like Thundercats, like what?
Also on Friday, November 16th, The Bisexual debuted on Hulu. This is supposed to be kind of like a comedy series dealing with sexuality. Then on Sunday, that's tomorrow for us as we're recording, or actually I think it's Sunday for you guys on the East Coast right now already, huh? On November 18th, Escape at Dannemora hit Showtime. This is based on a true story. Great actors involved in this. Benicio del Toro. And Again, can't think of his name. There's another actor I can't think of. But they play prisoners who escaped prison in New York, and there was this weird scandal with like a female who worked at the prison.
Like I said, I remember like seeing that on the news. I remember like the news talking about like the manhunt for like those guys and everything. That they were loose somewhere in New York, and I'm like, okay, I don't care. But yeah, I remember like seeing on the news like spoiler alerts, like one of them gets killed and the other gets captured.
Come on, man! First you tell us you're not a lawyer. Now you're spoiling real event TV shows. Man. Also, my brilliant friend comes to HBO. This is a mini-series that's on a really kind of famous book series. It's like a trilogy, and this is the first book that this series is based on. It's about like two young girls. They've been friends their whole lives, and when they're older, one of them kind of disappears, and it's kind of going back into their lives and their weird friendship or whatever. So check that out if you want. On Monday, November 19th, The Little Drummer Girl, another mini-series, comes to AMC. This is from the same people that made another series that hit AMC, the Hotel Manager or something like that was like a espionage series. So this is like another kind of espionage series coming to AMC. Then on Thursday, November 22nd, 2018, Mystery Science Theater 3000 returns to Netflix.
Yes, they're doing Mac and Me. That's amazing. I gotta see that.
So they're gonna have if they're doing Mac and Me, then they have to have what's his name do a cameo, right? Paul Rudd.
Yeah, Paul Rudd. Yeah. Do you know that meme, Alex?
I don't.
Every time Paul Rudd goes on Conan O'Brien to promote a movie, like they go to show the clip of the movie, and it's a clip of Mac and Me.
Where he gets thrown off a cliff or something like that. He slides off a cliff. I've seen it.
Yeah, he slides off the cliff. That's that clip, and Paul Rudd runs that clip every time he goes on Conan.
Yeah.
Great.
So I'm going to do Mac and Me. That's on Mystery Science Theater 3000. That hits Netflix. Also, No Activity, another series on CBS All Access, which is desperately trying to tell you that no, we are not just Star Trek Discovery when it's on there.
Like, CBS All Access is like just becoming the Star Trek channel, right?
Yeah.
Because they got like Star Trek Discovery. They're going to do a spin-off for a character from Star Trek Discovery. They're doing the Picard spin-off. They're doing like
the short series one, the short treks.
And now they're doing like an animated series, Lower Decks, like all on that. So it's just like Star Trek now, because unlike Disney and their streaming service, Star Trek is really like all CBS has. So they're leaning into it like super hard.
They do have more than that. The problem is that most of the content that's like big on CBS is for like an older audience that probably isn't
that don't have computers. It's the people who I talk to when I ask them for their email. I don't have computers. I don't know email.
You're not going to get the NCIS crowd on a streaming service. So that's it. Next week, Will and I are going to be discussing this week's episode of The Good Place, which is going to go on hiatus until I think towards the middle of December. It's going to come back for a few episodes and then probably be back in January for the rest of the season. But we've been discussing that through the weeks. So if you want to hear that, go back to our past podcast, our past couple episodes. We've been talking about season 3 of The Good Place, and that's what we're going to be talking about again next week. Until then, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Tyson Gifford. You can follow Will. He's at Voxel Hero. Do either of you have a social media network or presence you want to plug?
Just the Discord server.
Check out Game Witness.
Yeah, not just that, dude.
Just Google for Game Witness Discord.
Check out the Game Witness.
Yeah, but at least plug your own site. Yeah. Come on.
Is it GameWitness.com? You have the domain now, or?
I do, yeah. I have .com and .net.
Nice.
Okay. Like we're back in the 90s.
You need to get .org. You need to nail that down. But check out GameWitness.com or .net, and check out the Game Witness Discord channel. We're all on there from time to time. So check that out. And check out our Facebook page as well as our YouTube channel and our site, thetotalscreen.com. You can subscribe to this podcast through any major podcast client like iTunes or Pocket Cast, and the entire backlog of our podcast is available on our YouTube channel. So you can check that out as well as any past content from both our site and from when it used to be TV Enthusiasts that we ran. We still have some of that content up on our YouTube channel as well, so you can check that out. So, thank you everybody for listening. Good night.
Night.
If you would like to reach out to us and make a comment, send an email to contact@thetotalscreen.com. Stay tuned to The Total Screen for the very best.